The second highest valued sports team in the world across all sports has not won a championship since 1973, when Phil Jackson was a player. Today, we're going to take a look at the Knicks' historical suckitude. Everybody knows that the Knicks suck. And despite making the playoffs last year as a 4th seed, the Knicks have sucked as long as I can remember. Making the playoffs is an outlier, not the rule. They have sucked for almost my entire life. In 1999, the year I was born, the Knicks made the finals on a magical run as the 8th seed in a lockout-shortened season. They actually managed to do it without Patrick Ewing, as he tore his Achilles facing Indiana in the Eastern Conference Finals. Ewing was such a beast, he actually played with a torn Achilles for part of that game. Anyways, making the finals without Ewing as an 8th seed made it one of the most amazing runs ever, despite not being able to get over the hump against the San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs were a super team, and you can't really blame the Knicks for losing to them. Apparently, the Knicks used up all their good luck for this century in that improbable run. Since the turn of the century, the Knicks have lost 958 games, edging out the T-Wolves and Wizards for the worst record since then, culminating in a 400 win percentage. In that same time span, the Knicks had just 4 over 500 seasons, one of them being the lockout-shortened season in 2011-2012. This atrocious timeline coincides exactly when the Cablevision Trust Fund billionaire James Dolan became chairman of Madison Square Garden in 1999, having had a hands-off ownership role prior to that. James Dolan quite possibly has the worst record of all time amongst major team owners hiring talent to fill out his organization. The Knicks have had a succession of some of the most terrible GMs, team presidents, and coaches in pro sports history. Dolan's complete ineptitude to hire competent management is the single biggest reason why the Knicks have been so bad despite having some of the highest payrolls in the league year after year after year. Honestly, looking at it from a fan's perspective, it really seems like Dolan just wants to hire whoever will kiss his butt in that moment. If the guys choosing the players that will actually be on the court have no idea what they're doing, guess what? Your team's gonna suck. And suck the Knicks have. In the first decade of the new century, the Knicks suffered atrocious front office management by Scott Layden, who traded away Marcus Camby, who was vital to the 1999 run, and will become a 4-time All-Defensive Selection and Defensive Player of the Year. Mark Jackson was one of the Knicks' better point guards of all time and still holds many Knicks assist records. And the 7th overall pick, which would become Nene, who was a solid starting center for years with Denver. What did the Knicks get in return, you might ask? Surely a king's ransom. We got Antonio McDeese, the rights to Frank Williams, and a 2003 second-round pick, which turned into Maciej Lampe. Ever heard of them? Me either, until I made this video. So 3 NBA starters, including a franchise centerpiece, future defensive player of the year, a former rookie of the year, and a solid starting center for absolute scrubs who played a combined 18 games for the Knicks over the years. Great trade, Scott. Obviously, Dolan fired Layden after the team went from the finals to early playoff exits to missing the playoffs in rapid succession due to his terrible moves. Somehow, Dolan managed to make a bad thing worse by hiring Isiah Thomas in 2003, who many have dubbed the worst sports executive of all time. Isiah Thomas was an amazing player who won rings with the Bad Boy Pistons, but on the Knicks, he made a series of progressively more destructive moves as the GM that resulted in the Knicks not only being one of the worst teams in the league, but also somehow managing to simultaneously have the highest payroll and no draft picks. His crown jewel of ineptitude was when he traded Tim Thomas, Mike Sweetney, Jermaine Jackson, an unprotected 2006 first-round pick, and a 2007 pick swap that would ultimately become multiple-time All-Stars LaMarcus Aldridge and Joakim Noah. As if that wasn't enough, he also threw in 2007 and 2009 second-round picks to the Chicago Bulls for Eddie Curry and Antonio Davis. Yes, that Eddie Curry. The one who ate himself out of the league after having one decent season with the Knicks and then battled depression and personal issues, ballooning to over 325 pounds and being unable to even move up and down the court, let alone play in games, all while taking up the Knicks' cap space. Needless to say, this was just one of many terrible moves by Thomas, and the Knicks' present and future were absolutely screwed. They had no picks thanks to their trades, while being bottom feeders in the East and having one of the highest payrolls in the league year in and year out. The worst possible place for a franchise to be in, a special type of Knicksian hell. After the Knicks finally got rid of Thomas, they instated Donnie Walsh. Walsh had just come off making the Pacers into a perennial playoff candidate, making the playoffs 17 times during his 20-year tenure as GM and president. Walsh made a couple of good moves when he got to the Knicks, like getting rid of some bad contracts that Thomas had garnered over the years, but then he signed Amari Stoudemire to a 5-year, $100 million contract. As many will remember, the signing of Stoudemire was some sort of consolation prize, as the Knicks had hoped to sign marquee free agent LeBron James. It became clear that that was an absolute fantasy and was never going to happen after LeBron's infamous decision to go play for the Miami Heat. LeBron spurning the Knicks capped off the most disastrous decade in the history of New York sports. First the Layden era, then the Isiah era, then Walsh spending 2 years gutting the team just to have $100 million in cap space to spend on a guy with a bad knee and a bad eye who hadn't played defense in 6 years. Sadly, I'm talking about Stoudemire there. Do you realize the Knicks have given away top 10 lottery picks in 2004, 2006, 2007, 2009, 2010, and potentially 2011 and 2012? How is that even possible? Stoudemire had been the running mate of Steve Nash for his entire career and had an athletic style of play. An exciting player. Some questioned Stoudemire's ability to be the main guy on a team, and more importantly, questioned whether his knees would hold up much longer. For the 5-year course of his contract, that is. Walsh probably did too, so he immediately started pursuing Nuggets star Carmelo Anthony, a New York native who had expressed his desire to play for the Knicks and was trying to force a trade out of Denver. Most likely, it was also in the back of Walsh's head that Stoudemire's knees would go soon and that the Knicks needed to capitalize on their short window of opportunity by making a trade. So he decided to mortgage the franchise's future once again and traded for Anthony, giving up 2 future first-rounders, Danilo Gallinari and Wilson Chandler, amongst others. I've heard people in the past try to make the argument that giving up Gallinari and Chandler as the centerpieces of the deal wasn't that bad to get Melo, but those people don't understand how absolutely pitiful the Knicks are at drafting talent. Gallinari and Chandler were the first Knicks draft picks, aside from David Lee, to average over 12 points per game since 1988. I really want to go in depth on some of those horrendous picks by the Knicks, but honestly, there's too many and it deserves its own video. Anyways, Anthony was able to opt out of his contract in 2011, and as said, the Knicks decided not to wait. This costed them the building blocks that would have likely helped Melo thrive in New York, the chance to pick a serviceable stretch 4 in 2014, and a borderline all-star guard in Jamal Murray, selected by Denver with the Knicks' 2016 pick. The situation got even worse when new Knicks president Glenn Grunwald notoriously traded for former number 1 pick Andrea Bargnani and gave up yet another 2016 first rounder. For some reason, the Knicks were desperate to give away all their 2016 first rounders, and this was an absolutely stacked draft in which Domantas Sabonis, Pascal Siakam, the aforementioned Jamal Murray, Caris LeVert, DeJounte Murray, and Malcolm Brogdon all would have easily been available for them with either one of their picks. Obviously, Grunwald would become yet another front office casualty, and then Phil Jackson swooped in 2014, re-signed Melo to a long-term deal, drafted Porzingis in 2015, and French point guard Frank Ntilikina 2 years later. Jackson absolutely fleeced Dolan, making hilariously intentionally bad moves, tanking the franchise, signing people like Jose Calderon and Sasha Vujacic to start for the team, just altogether tanking on purpose, while also making an insane $15 million a year salary. Jackson set records for futility with the Knicks, and that's hard to do. He did this all while alienating players, strong-arming coaches, and ultimately hurting the Knicks brand, if that's even possible. Also, he specifically targeted free agents who would fit the triangle offense, which was severely outdated by this point. He also attacked Carmelo Anthony through his personal media mouthpieces, such as Charlie Rosen. This resulted in a huge falling out with the Knicks' one saving grace, Porzingis, because he idolized Carmelo growing up. Basically, the perception around the league was that the Knicks were a laughingstock organization that players should stay away from. And when Porzingis was essentially traded for cap space and scrubs, Knicks fans knew all too well where this was headed. The Knicks are the only team in the league who consistently try to build their entire team through free agency and trades, rather than building a young core through the draft and then going from there. Every other rebuilding team in the league focuses on getting as many high draft picks as possible to have the most amount of chances at getting stars. As you can see, bafflingly and maddeningly so, the Knicks consistently trade all their young players and assets for overpaid, often injured veterans that have no hope of bringing the franchise anywhere towards a championship. You would think the Knicks would learn after missing out on so many potential stars from chasing old veterans, but they never do. For me, the saddest part about making this video is that I've actually had to skip literally dozens of terrible trades, drafts, and other things just out of the sheer amount of fails the Knicks have had in the last 20 years. Insane. The Knicks are destined to suck forever, and I've just accepted it at this point. What do you think? Do you think the Knicks will turn it around, or do you think they'll continue to trade all their young promising players for potential stars? Let me know in the comments. Peace.